Za'Darius Smith wants out. Adam Thielen probably on his way out. Maybe there's a Dalvin Cook trade coming. I think it's going to be a wild weekend. Let's break it down on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome to Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings, and thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. You can also find the show on Amazon Fire or Roku, and boy, do we have some stuff to break down. I kind of thought that I would be talking about like a random draft prospect, but then everything exploded. So none of this is official, but the news dump of Thursday is, I think it's going to become official on Friday. It has to be by like Monday or Tuesday. So by the time you listen to this, or at least between now and talking to you on Monday morning, this stuff I think will officialize. Za'Darius Smith seems to be pretty close to being released. He's requested his release, but the Vikings have denied it. A lot of interesting stuff there. Adam Thielen, it's been talked about for a while. I mean, Darren Wilson's been on this for weeks, that he's trending more toward a cut than not, and it seems like that is all but a done deal. And maybe there's a Dalvin Cook trade coming down the horizon. Those are the big three that I know about as of this recording. But we are getting to the part of the year where things sort of move faster than a daily schedule, where stuff kind of develops moment by moment. And so this show will sort of become a daily wrap-up thing rather than as on the fly as some other shows that will do like emergency podcasts right after the event drops. I'll keep doing this at the same time every day because I know people love having it in the morning. So let's start with Za'Darius Smith, because that's a fascinating situation. There's so many little nuances to it. So Za'Darius Smith, you all know his cap situation. It saves like $12.5 million or something like that to cut him. And a lot of people want to because that's the single biggest move they can make cap-wise. It's the single biggest savings attached to one player. Now, I think it's also one of the hardest players to replace. So I don't know if you're thinking far enough ahead with that. But here's where we're at. Za'Darius Smith has been under the impression for the last few weeks, Darren Wolfson, I think, was on this first, and then there were some whispers about it at the Combine. He sold his house, that he is not going to be a Viking. He does not think he's going to be a Viking in 2023. Again, sold his house, and that's been the rumor. On Thursday, he posted like a heartfelt little thank you to the Minnesota organization, which didn't literally say goodbye, but it was like very much a goodbye post, but like just vague enough to be cryptic, to technically be cryptic. Well, within minutes, all the reporters were all over it. And Ian Rappaport was the first one to get a statement out. And he said that Za'Darius Smith requested his release from the Vikings, but that the Vikings did not grant it. Remember, Za'Darius Smith is under contract for 2 years. So if the Vikings want to, they don't have to do anything. The most Za'Darius Smith can do is hold out, and he doesn't have any guaranteed salary. So that's a pretty bad move. So the leverage there is the Vikings can just say, no, we're not releasing you. You don't get to leave. You get to play for us or you don't play at all, right? But the first thing I want to do here, the reaction that I've seen that bothers me the most is, well, if he doesn't want to be a Viking, then bye. Get out of here then. Screw you. We don't need you. That anger, I don't like it. And here's why. This is business. The way you as a fan feel by seeing that Za'Darius Smith didn't want to stay in Minnesota is the way every player feels when they signed a 4-year contract and get cut 2 years into it, right? And I don't want to hear people talk about Za'Darius Smith like, well, he signed the contract. He's got to honor it because teams don't have to honor it. So that's not how it works at all, right? He can request his release and the team has every right not to grant it. But I don't, even if it is a contentious, somebody pissed him off, or maybe they tried to give him a lowball pay cut and he got mad about that or something like that. I guess there's two principles here. One, it's about money until proven otherwise, and we have really good reason to believe it's about money. Za'Darius Smith's contract is genuinely insulting for a guy who produced at a top 10 level, and if you're worried about his injury history, he did play all 17 games, all 18 games because he played in the playoff game too. So he played the entire season. He produced very highly. All of that was uncertain. He hit every incentive in his contract. There is nothing left for Za'Darius Smith to prove that he has earned a bigger contract. And this is where I start to inject my guess for what's going on here. But even if it is a dynamic where he doesn't want to be here because he wants to play somewhere else, he is within his right to try to leverage everything at his disposal to try to get that to happen. He does not get to just quit, and he isn't doing. I mean, he can't do that. The contract says he can't do that. But he is well within his rights to ask them for a release, to post on social media something that was very respectful and polite, and saying, "Hey, thank you, everything for the Minnesota organization." A couple of nice pictures of him with like coaches and stuff. Had a great time. Love you guys. Like, just to say, like, that's all within range. And to try to use that to negotiate a better deal for himself. Because ultimately, this is going to get more political than some people. We live in a country that does capitalism, and that means that you negotiate things. That means that employees negotiate with employers, and even as that playing field isn't sometimes, it's still the system that we live in. And that means that employees have tools such as holdouts or, strikes and unionizing and stuff in non-football things, or, being part of a union like football players are. Those are tools at their disposal, and they get to use them. Just like teams get to use tools at their disposal, like, know you're under contract, you have to play with us, or demanding a trade or forcing a trade on someone or something like that, right? So here's where I think we're at. Za'Darius Smith's contract is small, and almost none of it is guaranteed. He is currently, if he gets cut tomorrow, he does not see another dime from the Minnesota Vikings organization. A little bit of prorated bonus that he has already collected the salary cap has to catch up to that, so we take a dead cap hit. But in terms of physical cash flow, Za'Darius Smith has already received every dollar he will receive from the Minnesota Vikings. If he plays every game next year, he gets $14 million, but a bunch of that is tied up in per game roster bonuses. Only $5 million of that will guarantee, and it guarantees March 17th. So that's the deadline for something here to get done. But even that, the situation could be that he sits on it. If he didn't make any kind of stink, he would sit on his contract. A bunch of guarantees would vest. He goes into training camp, and then they say, "Hey, we're going to make you take a pay cut, or we're going to cut you because we got this edge rusher we drafted that we really like," or whatever. And the Riley Reef move that happened with Anthony Barr, happened with a whole bunch of people, right? Hey, take a pay cut or we're ousting you. And he either has to go enter the market when everybody's roster is already pretty much constructed, and now his earning potential is totally torpedoed, or he has to just accept whatever pay cut the Vikings decide they want to give him, and he doesn't want to be in that situation. Again, I'm totally speculating here. I have no evidence of that actually being Za'Darius Smith's thought process, but it's just one that makes sense to me, so that's going to be my best guess. So he wants more money, and whether that comes from the Vikings or comes from the open market, I don't think he's going to care. It's all about, I play for Team Green, baby, right? So what I think is, all right, I want to go hit the open market because I think I can do better than this deal on the open market. And the Vikings saying, "Well, hold on. We'd love to keep you in the building. Can we not work something out?" And now they're leveraging social media at each other in this negotiation, which is a tool that both sides absolutely have at their disposal, and it's totally fair for both sides to go at that. So I don't know what happens with Za'Darius Smith. It seems like he's a lot closer to being released than not, but it seems like the Vikings are still trying to work something out. My guess would be that by the time you listen to this, we will have an answer. And if I had to put money on an answer, I would say the odds-on favorite is that Za'Darius Smith is released Friday or sometime this weekend. But There's nothing stopping them from coming together last minute and making a deal, right? But that deal probably makes Za'Darius Smith more expensive than he was already, and that's okay. I know everybody's freaking out about cap space, but that's okay. And he's very much worth it. He is insanely underpaid, and the amount of stability in his contract is a genuine insult. Rectifying that is only fair, in my opinion. And in terms of the cap problem that creates, well, that might be handled with a couple of other moves that we still have to go into here on Locked On Vikings. Before doing that, however, I want to talk about the best tasting protein bar on the planet. It's Built Bar. Built Bar is covered in 100% chocolate. It is a protein bar, but it tastes like a candy bar, and it's honestly sometimes hard to remember that these are not just candy bars in my refrigerator. They are absolutely delicious, covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in just obscene flavors like peanut butter brownie and coconut almond. These things, science shouldn't approve this. These are God's mistakes. Churro, covered in 100% chocolate, with only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. That's God's mistake. And now you can still, of course, go to Built.com, get a box of Built Bar delivered directly to your door. But if you don't want to wait, you can just pop on down to your local Sam's Club or Walmart and pick up a box. You can do a 4-bar box at your nearest Walmart, or if you're a Sam's Club kind of person, you can get a 13-bar box with hit flavors brownie, batter, and churro. Again, science has gone too far. Go grab some Built. You can thank me later. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings first listen of the day. I would love it if you guys check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Got a lot of draft breakdowns going on there. If you want to see some tape, get some draft prospects explained to you. I've done a lot of corners so far. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. But for now, let's keep talking about Adam Thielen, I guess, will be next. No, you know what? Let's do Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook, we'll do Adam Thielen last. This is the most nebulous of rumors. Nobody seems to know what's going on with Dalvin Cook. All the scuttlebutt about Za'Darius Smith is like very clear, and several different journalists and several different sourced up people have all kind of echoed the same thing. And it's the same thing with Adam Thielen. It's, hey, nothing's set in stone yet. No move has actually been made yet, but probably, at least as of this recording. So, but with Dalvin Cook, the rumor is nobody knows. Nobody knows where this situation is going to be. What we have seen is Dalvin Cook won't take a pay cut. And I've explained it before on this podcast, but the way I see pay cuts are as an option that the player is choosing, right? Because usually you're not just going up to someone and saying, pay cut or we're cutting you. Like, it's never that angry, right? And I think it definitely can read the player the wrong way. But it's also, there's an economics to this. Think about a player like Harrison Smith, who is rumored to be very close to taking a pay cut as well, right? That contract is being reworked. And it sounds like, if you're going to listen to Strib guys, at least, it sounds like he's closer to staying than not. And you go up to him and say, hey, look, man, your base salary is like 11 mil. We can't do that, but we can do 7 mil. What do you think you're going to make on the open market, right? And this is like his actual take-home cash flow that we're talking, because of course there's a bunch of prorated bonus and stuff, but that doesn't affect Harrison Smith's bank account this year. That's more salary cap accounting. But you know, your base salary is this. What do you think you make on the open market? There's a lot of effort that goes into determining that, right? His agent's got an opinion, his manager has an opinion, and that camp comes back and says, well, we think we're going to make $5.5 million on the open market. Maybe that's a fair amount for a safety of my caliber at my age, blah, blah, blah. That's what we think. And you can just go to him and say, okay, don't test it. We don't want you to go on the open market. We don't want you to test it. We don't want you to leave this building. And we value you. And so how about we just give you 6? You think you can make 5.5? We'll outbid whatever you think you're going to get. We'll give you 6. We're not going to give you 11. That's not an option, but we'll give you 6. That's the logic. And if there is room between what you think you'll make on the market and what the team is willing to cut your salary down to, then that pay cut makes sense for Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith is not going to get $11 million, right? So him declining, or his pay declining from $11 million to say $7 million isn't really a thing he's doing out of kindness. It's a thing he's doing out of self-preservation, because that's still a better deal for him than what the market might be, at least in his estimation or his camp's estimation. It's all really unknown too. Harrison Smith could have gone out and gotten a $12 million paycheck or something, and he would never know. Or he could decline the pay cut, go hit free agency and only get 3. And he could be going, man, I wish I took that pay cut because I would have been getting 7 right now. But what I guess I want to drive home about these pay cuts is that they're not something that any player will or should do out of the kindness of their own heart. This is not a loyalty thing. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. And when it comes to these situations, and I don't like what I saw online about Za'Darius and Thielen and all these guys. It's about money until you see firm evidence that it isn't. It's about money. And even in situations where a player is angry, a lot of times they're angry about money. It's about the Benjamins, baby. And that's good. That's great. That's how healthy labor markets should work. That, laborers should be able to use all the tools at their disposal to try to maximize their earnings, and employers are within their rights to try to minimize that. Laborers should try to maximize that, and hopefully you come together with something. Not many industries work that way, which is a problem, but the NFL has all sorts of things that the NFLPA has put into the CBA, its salary cap and all that stuff. The way this system works is very often designed to give their side that advantage, right? So when it comes to Dalvin Cook, who, this was reported a while ago, he won't take a pay cut. He shouldn't take a pay cut. I say I am a Vikings fan. I love the Vikings. I'm much more loyal to the Vikings than I am to any other player as a fan. Dalvin Cook shouldn't take a pay cut because he can do better than that. He can probably, he's slated to make I think $11 million with bonuses and everything together. The franchise tag for running backs is $10.9 million, and 2 of them got it. So Dalvin Cook hits the market. He's probably the second best back on it. No, Saquon Barkley got it too. So he'll probably be the best back on the market. You're arguing for Miles Sanders, I guess. He will probably be the premier guy in a market where the franchise tag was set at 10.9 mil. That's the average of the top 5 deals. So if you give him a top 5 deal, you're giving him 10.9 million, and he makes 11 right now. Why would he ever take a pay cut? He can just get this exact same money on the market, and you say, okay, cut me. I'll go get my cash. But what's interesting is that there is apparently a trade market. So Darren Wolfson on his Scoops pod said that the Vikings have received a trade offer that involves Dalvin Cook. I don't know what that trade offer is. I don't know if it's a conditional 7th or if it's real draft capital, but it's really important that option is on the table. That changes the dynamic here a little bit, because now the floor is that trade offer. That trade offer is strictly better than cutting him. Unless that trade offer is you give us picks 2 to get rid of his contract, which I would be stunned to find that out. That trade offer is strictly better because A, you're getting draft picks back, but B, trading him saves $2 million more against the cap than cutting him does, because there's $2 million of guaranteed salary in Dalvin Cook's contract. You cut him, the Vikings are on the hook for it. You trade him, his new team is on the hook for it. So you can send that money over to them. His unguaranteed salary, again, that goes over to his new team, and then you just have prorated bonus that accelerates, that eats into your cap savings a little bit, but you could designate it post-June if you had to. So that means that if you can't get an extension or some kind of deal worked out with Dalvin Cook, which again, I do not anticipate, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him at all, then you go call up whatever that trade offer was and say, all right, let's send it. Even if it's nothing. And I don't expect it to be huge draft capital. He's a running back, and there's the value of all that. And, he's older, and there's money attached. So I don't expect there to be a huge draft capital. But even if it is a conditional 2026 7th rounder, trading him is still better than cutting him for the Vikings because it saves a little bit of extra money that is guaranteed in his contracts. Of course, it's way worse for Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook would rather get cut than traded because then that gives him a little more control over where he goes, right? Look at what happened with Derek Carr. He would have been traded to the Saints. He gets cut. Now he gets to negotiate his own contract with them, and he could have gone to the Jets or whatever if he so chose. So it changes the math a little bit, where now cutting Dalvin Cook is no longer a thing he can like leverage in the negotiation. It's either agree to this deal with me or agree to a different deal with whatever your new team is, which probably would happen. So that trade would come. And also, even if you did call up, hey, team that wanted to trade me for Dalvin Cook, let's do it. You still probably need Dalvin Cook's camp to go agree to a deal with them, which will take some time. So that would explain kind of the delay. Well, there's an offer. Why is it just sitting there? Well, it takes time to process through all that. But again, March 15th, the Vikings have to be under the cap. And if they're trading Dalvin Cook away, that's probably part of their strategy to do it. So I would expect this to be done before tampering opens so that the Vikings know that they have that money to work with. That leaves us with Adam Thielen, who is in the same pay cut situation Harrison Smith was in, but he's kind of on the other side of it, where he probably thinks he can get, or it sounds like he thinks he can get more on the open market than whatever the Vikings are offering him. And unless that situation resolves itself, this is going to be a cut. So we got to go over the dynamics of that situation as well. So let's move on. Adam Thielen is probably the one that's going to hurt Vikings fans the most. So again, for a few weeks now, the scuttlebutt, the whispers have been that Adam Thielen he was reworking his contract at the Super Bowl at Radio Row. He went on some podcast or other, some radio show or other, and did an interview, and they asked him, what's up with your contract, right? And he said, I want to retire the Viking. I want to stay a Viking. We're trying to work out the contract, right? And I believe the sincerity of that, because if you did want to hit free agency, saying that publicly would not really further that goal. So I believe him. I believe that he would rather stay in Minnesota if possible. Or, he could do the Kyle Rudolph thing where the roots are still here and stuff, but I guess he's living in Florida now, so whatever. That said, the money still has to work. Again, it's all about the Benjamins. You could be as in love with the state as the people who wrote Fargo, but if the money's not right, then that's not going to work. It's like, do you love living in Minnesota? Okay, do you love living in Minnesota so much that you'll give up $3 million to do it? I ain't going to blame you, right? And again, it's not a contentious dynamic. This is business. This is negotiation. Two people can like each other, go into a negotiation with each other, and still like each other on the other way out of it, as long as there's a mature understanding of what negotiations are, right? But he's kind of on the flip side of this Harrison Smith thing. The Vikings come to him and say, hey, we'll give you $7 million. And he goes, well, I think I can make 8 or 9, right? Like Alan Lazard is projected to get like 11.5. I can get 8 or 9, even though I'm a little older. And maybe you say, well, we kind of only think you're going to get 5 or 6 because you are a little older and we think that's going to be valued higher. And really, everyone's just guessing. There's no manual for this. There's no index for this you could just look it up on. This is totally guessing and projection, and that's kind of the game. But if the Vikings number is lower than the Thielen camp's number, then Thielen's going to bet on himself. And of course he would. Wouldn't you, right? So I want the main point of this show to be the thing I said at the beginning, which is I don't want to see those grapes get sour, all right? Leave that at the door, because football players don't owe you jack all right? They don't owe you their loyalty. They don't owe you the time of day. They're here as part of a business to try to make a buck. They don't owe the Vikings anything, just like you don't owe your employer anything. And if they came to you and said, we're slashing your pay, you would say, good luck with that, and you'd leave and never come back. And I think that that's all fair and well within the rights, and I don't think that it is an insult to your identity as a Vikings fan, which sometimes it can feel like. Allow me to get on the soapbox on that for a little bit. I think when we're a fan of a team, it's truly a part of your identity, right? I mean, it's the shirt you wear, it's the bumper sticker you have, it's the thing on your wall, it's the thing you do with your Sundays. It is a part of your identity. You know, my name is Luke. I'm a guy. I live in LA, and I'm a Vikings fan. So this is a part of who I am, and I think when you grow up with it, it's part of who you are too. And I think that's beautiful. And then when a player disrespects or is perceived to disrespect the organization that you're a fan of, it can feel like that player has disrespected you personally. And that is not the case. And that's why I'm being so adamant about that. This is business. It's just ones and zeros and commas and green. It's not about how good of fans you were. It's not about how good an organization it is. We have now objective empirical evidence anonymously gathered, or gathered under the protection of anonymity, I guess, that reflects very well on the Vikings organization. With Za'Darius Smith in particular, it's very clear that he was very happy here the whole time. He loved the coaching. He loved everything. He came because of those facilities and because of the staff that they had, which that's the staff that he came because of is still in place. That's Mike Smith and Mike Pettin. Those guys are still here. That sort of turn, we just don't have any evidence that says that Za'Darius Smith hates the Vikings or hates Minnesota or hates Minnesotans and thinks that they are bad. And that's not the case. I see people taking it personally. I want you to not take it personally. It's not about you. It's not about Minnesota. It's not about the Vikings. It's about money. It always is. It always will be at its very core. Most things are. So let's talk about the money, and we'll wrap this up with that. Where the Vikings are at, if all this stuff comes to pass, if you just pop open like the salary cap calculator, I guess, you cut Adam Thielen, you have Harrison Smith take, I'll say, a modest pay cut of, we'll say $5 million, brings his cap hit down to a little bit like $10 million, which I think is good rate for him. You cut Za'Darius Smith, you trade Dalvin Cook, and you cut Adam Thielen. And let's say we post-June cut Adam Thielen, which spreads the pain out a little bit more. And since there's so much cap space next year, we're good. We're good. We're very safe to do that. We have a lot of road to kick the can down, if you will, a lot more than we have had in years past. You are looking at a cap situation, and this is without doing anything to Danielle Hunter, TJ Hawkinson, Dalvin Tomlinson, still needing to extend guys like Jefferson and such, not cutting Hicks, not cutting Ham, none of that stuff, doing nothing with Kirk Cousins, no restructure of Brian O'Neill. You are looking at $22 million in cap space, which is probably closer to like 12 in functional cap space because you need 10 mil to do your draft picks and stuff. 22 mil, 12 mil to spend in free agency on a corner or something like that. And you're probably about halfway through the moves the Vikings could make if they really wanted to. But now you're well under the cap and there's no real deadline on those other moves. I don't think that there's too much salary vesting that happens that you need to worry about in any of these contracts. So you're past the March 15th deadline, you're good to go. And the next thing is probably, okay, what do we do about Dalvin Tomlinson? Because we don't want him to walk. It's probably the next most urgent move. But you have 22 mil to work with. You're in the black, you're cap compliant. And in 2024, they would be projected in this world to have $150 million in cap space. 150 in cap space. Justin Jefferson's going to take a chunk of that. You might have a quarterback thing take a chunk of that if you're going to extend Kirk Cousins. But all of this also sounds like that is just, I would be really surprised if they like cut all these players to make a whole bunch of cap space and then extended Kirk Cousins. Because if you were to extend Kirk Cousins, you could do so in a way that saves so much 2023 cap space that these cuts would no longer become necessary. And you're not just going to get rid of players to get rid of them. So this is not a team that is behaving like it's about to extend Kirk Cousins. And I really would not see that happening. Maybe it happens after the draft. Maybe they strike out on trading up for a quarterback or something and they go, all right, we'll stick with you. But I don't see that happening soon, at least. And they've got all kinds of other buttons that they can push. This would basically, these three moves, should they come to pass the way that it is reported that they are going to, these three moves would put the Vikings in a pretty good spot cap wise. Basically, you could consider the problem fixed. Fixed and in a way that it has not been since Kirk Cousins joined the Vikings. Since, that 84 million fully guaranteed, that whole contract everybody crowed about, the Vikings have had cap maneuvering to do every year, and that would be a thing of the past. That would be the last cap maneuvering they have to do if all that stuff comes to pass. The problem is it creates a bunch of roster holes. Now you got to replace an edge rusher. And if that happens, we'll talk about on Monday. That's probably what I'm going to talk about is an edge rusher. They would have to replace Dalvin Cook. Now they could probably do that pretty cheaply, be it with a cheap draft pick or cheap money. They would have to replace Adam Thielen. That's not something they can do as cheaply. So you've created needs and you have a lot of resources. I don't love being in that spot because there's a lot of opportunities for things to fail where you know what Za'Darius Smith is. And I feel a lot more confident about putting my eggs in his basket than putting my eggs in the basket of somebody that has never been a Viking. But that's just me, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't agree with that. So we'll see how it all plays out. It's going to be a wild weekend. And whatever happens on the other side of it, I'll talk to you all on Monday morning to put it all together. Follow me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL and at Locked On Vikings. I will have little short reaction videos on Twitter for whatever news does happen. We'll make sure that those things are coming out. And of course, Patreon and stuff will continue to go, and we can all talk about it there live. And then I'll do a recap pod of it on Monday, and then tampering starts, and then we're in free agency in earnest. So we'll have a lot to talk about. I'll see you all next weekend. Godspeed, survive, take some walks, shovel the driveway if you have to. And as always, Skull.